Unbelievable transformation, how a black girl overcame bullying to expose courage in the hallway. Amara clutched her worn notebook tighter, feeling the familiar sting of hurtful whispers echo in her mind as she navigated the crowded hallways. Every laugh from a passing group felt like a jab, every sideways glance a reminder of her isolation. In this small, predominantly white town, she felt like a ghost, a specter hidden behind the vibrant laughter of joy that didn't include her. 3 years of tumult had carved self-doubt deep into her bones, leaving her feeling like a shadow, invisible against the backdrop of her peers' carefree lives. At home, her family filled the walls with resilience. Her grandmother's stories of survival echoed through generations, offering strength and love. Still, in the cacophony of the school cafeteria, with its mingling aromas of pizza and fries, despair wrapped around Amara's heart like barbed wire. Doubt surged as she stood in line alone, knowing all too well that her existence was often dismissed. Today, she stood overcome with the weight of her own worthlessness, wondering if her voice could ever be heard. Later, rummaging through her grandmother's attic, Amara stumbled upon old journals resurrecting tales of struggle. Each entry dripped with the fierce honesty of a woman who had fought battles in the face of injustice, echoing the very same pain that curled in Amara's gut. She could almost feel her grandmother's spirit urging her on, encouraging her to stand tall. Inspired, she dared to write, pouring out her heart in essays that unveiled the raw and often painful reality of bullying that thrived in the shadows. As her words crafted a shield around her frail spirit, Amara announced her school project, intended to shine a light on the mental health struggles bullying instilled in students. But little did she know, waves of backlash would await her. Peers once indifferent grew hostile, while some school authorities looked down upon her efforts with skepticism. Her triumph turned to ashes, teasing her with a fleeting glimpse of hope before plunging her back into the dark recesses of ridicule and isolation. An avalanche of doubt buried her, squeezing her tighter until it felt impossible to breathe. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as the feeling of utter hopelessness began to settle in, the voice of her empathetic English teacher cut through the noise, offering guidance and encouragement. Hours spent in the sunlit sanctuary of the classroom morphed Amara's pain into purpose. The moment she uncovered her mother's own history of injustice nearly identical to her own struggles ignited a fire within her, compelling Amara to fight for every student unfairly silenced by bullying. As the school assembly loomed closer, anxiety clawed at her, twisting her stomach into knots. Standing before her classmates, the echoing emptiness of the auditorium wrapped around her like a vice. She could almost hear the whispers begin to ripple through the crowd. Heart racing, uncertainty settled deep within, yet beneath the fear surged a fire, a fierce need to reveal the truth. Each word would peel back layers of hurt and resilience, exposing the silent sufferings of countless students, but as she began to speak, voices from the crowd twisted her proclamation into a war of disbelief. Unexpectedly, an irate adult charged through, raising doubts and throwing ammonia into the air thick with tension. Amara felt her body freeze, poised at the precipice of confrontation, caught between the trepidation of silence and the yearning for truth. Would she retreat into the shadows, shrouded in fear, or rise above to finally claim her voice? The auditorium buzzed with electricity, and Amara stood in the eye of the storm, heart pounding against the deafening silence that enveloped her. Amara's heart raced as her mind swirled through a maze of thoughts. Did she dare confront the man interrupting her moment? His anger was palpable, yet she had come too far to shrink away now. The feels of air escaping her lungs propelled her forward. She needed to reclaim space, not just for herself, but for every voiceless student worn down by fear. Her voice trembled, yet she spoke louder than she imagined she could. This isn't about me. It's about the pain hidden behind every smile. The words sprang forth, defiant, as if her grandmother's spirit infused strength directly into her veins. The somber gaze of the audience shimmered with surprise and curiosity. Perhaps the vulnerability she offered now clung to a thread of solidarity beneath their initial disbelief. The adult glared, disbelief etched across his features, but Amara could see in their eyes the flickering acknowledgement of truth. They felt it too, the loneliness, the fear of being unworthy. The edges of her resolve sharpened as the whispers that had once haunted her transformed into an undercurrent of support, urging her onward. In that moment, she decided to take a step further. Every day, some of us walk through these halls feeling invisible and unheard. Bullying doesn't just happen in secret, it suffocates lives in plain sight. We're so much more than labels or the cruelty of others. She let the weight of her words sink in, holding back the tide of uncertainty. It was time for authenticity. The audience sat still, eyes trained on her. Amara took a deep breath and pressed on. She spoke of her grandmother's battles, her mother's stories of resilience, and her own struggle within the stark walls of her high school. Her narratives knitted a tapestry of generations unbroken by their struggles, and the threads of courage began to weave their way through the crowd. Amara noticed her peers shifting in their seats, a mix of realization and empathy flashing in their eyes. The laughter that had once stung now seemed hollow, as those who had once spoken ill of her began to reflect on their own ignorance. It was not forgiveness she sought, but understanding, allowing the mundane details of their shared existence to pave a path toward healing. The adult, simmering with frustration, attempted to regain control, but Amara quickly countered, adjusting the narrative. Think of the students who carry scars unheard while maintaining bright smiles. They deserve a voice too. Her spirit surged, transforming the dynamic in the room. Realization dawned in the minds of her classmates, the understanding that silence would only perpetuate their shared suffering. Courage blossomed where there had been ridicule. Confidence ignited within her, igniting like a firework exploding against the night sky. Each student's gaze morphed from judgment to reflection, slowly shifting the course of her journey. Just as Amara sensed the tide turning, a figure emerged from the back of the auditorium, a familiar face. It was her friend Mia. The light around her radiated warmth, offering Amara an unspoken camaraderie. As Mia walked close to the stage, Amara felt a rush of encouragement, a validation only true friendship could provide. However, this shift brought a new wave of uncertainty. Would Mia stand beside her now, or was their friendship tied to expectations that kept her silent? Would she voice her own struggles and join the chorus of truth? The auditorium buzzed, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. Amara could feel the weight of the moment swelling, and the outcome teetered on the precipice of revelation. Would she choose to embrace the fight alongside her friends, or would fear continue to lurk at the edges of her newfound courage? As the tension crackled like static in the air, Amara held her breath, caught between the hope blossoming around her and the dread that clung to her. The real battle was just beginning, and she was ready to confront whatever awaited her on the other side of this moment. Amara's gaze flickered to Mia, who stood a few feet away, her eyes wide and shimmering with an array of emotions. The room seemed to expand and contract, each heartbeat echoing louder as if the auditorium itself was holding its breath. Would her friend speak up? Would she choose vulnerability over silence? Suddenly, the skeptical adult at the front broke the silence, his voice cutting through the thick tension like a knife. Enough of this theatrics. You're just a child. You have no idea what real pain is. His words were harsh, a reminder of the barriers Amara fought against. Her heart sank momentarily, but she quickly shook off the doubt trying to grip her. Mia took a small step forward, and Amara's heart raced anew. This was the pivotal moment. She could feel her resolve boiling within her, a hot mixture of courage and fear. Would Mia join her? Would they both confront the frailty of reputation, the audacity of false narratives that defined so many students around them? I do know pain, Mia replied, her voice steady and clear despite the chaotic energy in the room. And I've felt it in my own way. But we hide it, don't we? We wear a mask to fit in, and we tell ourselves it's okay. But Amara's right, it's not okay. Amara met Mia's gaze, relief washing over her like a cool wave. The warmth of their unspoken pact ignited something in Amara, a surge of collective strength that pulsed with each word they exchanged. They were fuel for each other, lights illuminating a dark path. She took a step closer to Mia, her voice unfurling like a banner. Together, we can be louder. We can choose to acknowledge our scars and help others shed their masks. The audience, captivated, absorbed the dopaminergic rush of authenticity radiating from the two girls. The adult narrowed his eyes, but Amara could see in the faces of her classmates a slow transformation from apathy to contemplation. They were beginning to understand that change wasn't merely in grand gestures but in the recognition of shared truths and vulnerabilities. Unity was building, one student at a time, standing shoulder to shoulder against the edifice of ignorance. As Amara shared anecdotes about her struggles, her hesitations, her private battles with worthiness, she felt a shift within herself. No longer was she just the shy girl, she was a beacon of a call to action. Each sentence formed a thread of connection, and with Mia beside her, their words wove a tapestry of empowerment that enveloped the audience. Gradually, students began to rise, one by one recounting their stories, their pain, their truths. Amara felt a smile bloom on her face. This was more than just a moment, it was a movement. She had unleashed a wave, and the tide was pulling everyone closer. Yet, deep down, dread lingered. Some students stood at the edge of the group, hesitant and unsure. The whispers of self-doubt gnawed at Amara. What if this uprising against silence was only temporary? The pressures of conformity loomed larger with each story shared. Then, she saw a hostile face from the back of the auditorium, a sneer curling around the lips she wished would rather remain silent. The very students who had rallied against her now seemed unyielding. They were simmering with anger, branding her an outlier once again, ready to strike at the first sign of weakness. This sense of impending conflict gnawed at her, she could feel her heart pounding sharply against her chest. Were they willing to push back against the tide of honesty she had generated? Would she have the fortitude necessary to withstand the backlash, or was she standing on a precipice that might lead to a fall? Amara caught Mia's eye, a silent answer brewing between them, charged with courage and fear. Now, the stakes were higher than before and the true confrontation was looming just ahead. Would she face the forthcoming realities of what it means to spark change, knowing that authenticity breeds both light and shadows? The room pulsed with energy, a mixture of anticipation and trepidation swirling through the air like an electric current. Amara could feel the weight of every gaze upon her, the collectively held breath of her peers waiting for the next moment. The hostile sneer in the back remained etched in her mind, a stark reminder of the potential repercussions that lay beyond the encouragement her words had kindled. With each attempt to bolster her resolve, fresh doubts crept in. Had she miscalculated? The fragile alliance she had fostered in this moment of vulnerability could shatter into fragments with the sharp of a single word. Still, she pressed forward, guided by the flicker of Mia's supportive nod and the echoes of shared truths. "I know it's hard to admit pain," Amara asserted, her voice steadying as she addressed the crowd, "but what if revealing that pain could strengthen us all? If we choose togetherness over isolation, we can transform our hurt into resilience." The words bore a weight of authenticity. She sensed the chairman at the front bracing for an argument, but the palpable emotion in the room was shifting something deeper than rhetoric. It was a collective hunger for understanding, for a space where authenticity could thrive without fear of ostracism. The gnawing fear that had haunted her morphed into a flicker of hope as she noticed the hesitance in others melt away just like her own facade had begun to collapse. "Look at each other," she urged, sweeping her gaze across the sea of faces now scattering whispers of reflection. "We're not so different. Behind each mask is a story that matters. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to feel lost or alone. But it isn't okay to hide from one another." Mia stepped beside her, fueled by Amara's strength. "None of us has to carry our burdens alone. Together, we can learn to shoulder them, finding common ground amidst our struggles. Imagine what could happen if we choose support over judgment." Amara noticed the edges of nervousness replaced with glimmers of insight, students connecting the absent threads of loneliness shared within their own lives. Something shifted within her. Self-doubt was fading, replaced with a fierce determination. This wasn't merely about her struggle, it was a metamorphosis for everyone in this room. But even as the tide turned, the back row simmered with tenacity, fueled by those unwilling to embrace vulnerability. Amara felt a familiar knot in her stomach, the specter of confrontation looming ominously. Would they lash out? Did they believe they could extinguish this burgeoning illumination of shared truth? Let us not forget, came a sharp voice from the dissenting group, cutting through her emerging confidence. Showing weakness is not a strength. Who are you to redefine how we should handle our pain? The challenge echoed in the stillness, tentative murmurs dancing across the assembly. Amara's pulse quickened, the balance of power swung precariously. Would the breakthrough she had ignited slip away, eclipsed by that single doubt? She sighed inwardly, knowing this was the moment that would either solidify her resolve or strip everything away. She faced the sneering challenger, her previous uncertainties crystallizing into focused clarity. The stakes were laid bare before her, not merely about defending what she had started, but an imperative call for every student to reclaim their narratives. Slowly, the corners of her mouth curled upward. Maybe it's time we redefine what it means to be strong. Strength isn't in the absence of pain, it's in our ability to share it, to rise together from its shadow. Just as she spoke, something shifted again. The hesitant silence filled with murmurs of agreement from unexpected corners, the initial blades of dissent dulled by the warmth of her words. Yet, Amara realized this was merely a first step, depths of confrontation still loomed. Could they unmask new power from inauthenticity? What would she have to face next to uphold this spark of bravery? As she scanned the room, each face held a myriad of stories, a testament to the unpredictable journey ahead. Amara felt the pull of adrenaline surge. She was ready for whatever lay ahead, except this time, she had no idea what confrontation awaited her, nor how far she could go to enforce a change in perspective. The time had come to face the barricades head-on, and she strived to understand whether she possessed the courage to navigate the tumultuous waters. Amara straightened her posture, eyes locked onto the challenger. The room held its breath. Anxiety coiled in her stomach, yet she couldn't retreat now. To hide our pain is to deny our very existence, she countered, the words cascading from her lips with newfound strength. We are simply human, and embracing vulnerability may lead us to the connections we desperately crave. The murmurs shifted, some skeptics straightened as murmurs of understanding rippled through the crowd. Doubt, once a weighty mantle, now felt lighter on her shoulders. Yet, as the exchange unfolded, Amara felt the intensity of the sneering voice from the back row. A face she could no longer ignore, fueling her determination. Your narrative does not account for the harsh reality many of us live in, he snapped, his tone laced with challenge. We can't afford to be weak. Some of us thrive on being tough. Isn't that what the real world demands? His words stung, a reminder of the dichotomy she had to bridge between strength and vulnerability and the walls others choose to fortify around themselves. For a moment, she felt her confidence waver, but she suppressed it, recognizing this confrontation as a mirror reflecting the very fears she fought against. What if I told you that strength lies in standing up, not just for ourselves, but with one another? Amara leaned forward, daring to reach out. What if I told you that being tough often means navigating through pain together instead of shouldering the burden alone? Silence enveloped the room once more, tension thickening the air. She could feel the skepticism lingering like a fog, but also see a shifting tide among her peers. The discomfort of truth was palpable, and it ignited something within everyone, curiosity mixed with doubt and a yearning for connection. Mia chimed in again, imagine if every person in this room stepped forward with their story. How many weights could we lift together? How many lives could we touch? There's power in sharing, we can become each other's strength. Amara noticed a subtle change in the atmosphere. Some faces softened, their carefully crafted exteriors beginning to crack like porcelain. But the hostile boy remained resolute, arms crossed, his glare not relenting. Yet, beneath his hardened facade, Amara could almost sense the tremors of fear, fear of exposure and vulnerability. Are you willing to keep living in a facade? Amara pressed, striving to reach him. Or will you acknowledge the pain and begin to break free? We all have scars, it's the courage to expose them that allows healing to begin. He hesitated, taken aback by her unwavering stance. Was it the first chink in his armor? Within her heart, Amara ignited the flicker of hope, pushing against the specter of doubt that had dogged her steps. If we can share our struggles, what we earn is not just sympathy, but empathy. It's that connection that transforms lives. Imagine a community grounded in support rather than judgment. With each word that left her mouth, Amara felt something within her solidify. She was no longer simply the one advocating for change, she was challenging every individual present to reclaim their narratives, to step into their power. The confrontation felt not like a battle but rather an invitation to discover strength through vulnerability, yet, in the back, the challenger's sneer deepened, and she recognized this wasn't over. The qualitative conflict teetered on the edge of unresolved tension, the room far from consensus. Her expression faltered slightly, but not her resolve. Perhaps this was the beginning of a greater struggle, one that would draw on her resilience and demand clarity in her vision. As the atmosphere hummed with uncertainty, Amara wondered, did she have the wisdom to maintain momentum in this fragile coalition? How would she navigate through a maze of resistance? The stakes were immeasurable, and a single misstep could unravel everything. Could she turn doubt into a cornerstone for growth, or would she buckle under the pressure of continued opposition? A new conviction settled in her heart. This was not just about her struggle but a shared journey fraught with possibilities. The battles ahead would demand every ounce of her courage, and the emotional burdens carried would still loom large. Yet she felt a pulse of resolve igniting within her, each moment pressed on her like a ticking clock, pushing her toward the next confrontation. What if she could turn this moment into a pivotal catalyst, redefining the weight of pain into a shared strength? The prospect was daunting, and anticipation coursed through her veins. Amara inhaled sharply, feeling the weight of the room's watchful gaze and the silent answer from the shadows. The real challenge had only just begun. Amara stood at the center of the room, heart racing as silence wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. She could feel the weight of every gaze bearing down on her, each pair anchoring the tension in the air. The moment was pregnant with possibilities, yet open to disaster if mismanaged. She had stepped onto this battlefield without fully realizing the potential for both growth and conflict that lay ahead. The boy in the back maintained his defiant posture, and she could see the shadows flitting across his features: frustration, anger, perhaps vulnerability lurking just beneath. In that moment, she understood that he wasn't merely a barrier in her discussion, he represented a systemic obstacle that countless others faced. This realization doused her with a bolstering sense of purpose. If we confront our hardship together, we can redefine what strength means, she asserted, her voice unwavering despite the turmoil inside. But inwardly, doubt flickered. Was she merely echoing platitudes, or could she genuinely initiate change? This moment might very well reveal the leader she secretly aspired to be or expose her as a pretender. As she looked around the room, she noticed various expressions. Some were pensive, while others were openly skeptical. But within those hardened facades, she sensed the unspoken question: what would they do if she faltered? That single thought propelled her to push harder. True strength is not about hiding our scars, it's about showing them and understanding our shared humanity. Mia, sitting near the front, leaned in closer, her features intense with focus. We can match strength with honesty. Maybe instead of treating vulnerability as a weakness, we should acknowledge it at the core of our connection. Look around, this is a powerful moment. Amara felt the energy shifting around her. Identifying a glimmer of emotional alignment, she decided to take a risk. Let us try something. Think about a time when you felt isolated or misunderstood. Just close your eyes and remember it. There was a palpable uncertainty, but she continued. Now, imagine sharing that moment with someone else, someone who truly listens. What would that feel like? Encouraged by rising murmurs, she could see the hesitant nods and shifting in seat as her peers wrestled with the vulnerability she was advocating. Yet the boy remained insistent, arms still crossed defiantly. His tension seemed to coil even tighter, and Amara felt the gravitational pull of his skepticism. Why do you think we all hide? She asked him directly, striving to peel back layers. What makes you so certain that displaying our vulnerabilities will diminish us? A frown flickered across his brow. The question hung heavily, but the boy couldn't evade it forever. Just as he was about to respond, Amara noticed a fleeting expression cross his face, perhaps resignation, perhaps fear. It stirred something deep inside her. Perhaps it is our perception of strength that has failed us. Maybe we've confused toughness with isolation, Amara pressed gently. What's truly tough is facing our fears together. In that charged moment, she sensed a shift, a crack in the atmosphere where connection could thrive, if only she could guide it. She had come to realize that every confrontation was as much about her own journey as it was about engaging others. Each interaction was a stepping stone, not just to eloquence, but to true emotional resonance. As the conversation in the room unfurled around her, Amara could feel an unexpected pulse of confidence. The challenges ahead would be numerous, yet she recognized a small flicker of shared understanding beginning to ignite in her peers. With a surge of determination, Amara declared, I believe we can act differently. I believe we can foster courage within vulnerability. But inwardly, the nagging thought returned, would her resolve hold when the harsh realities of judgment came crashing back? Would she have the audacity to challenge herself, to lead the way, to leverage this emerging strength into not just survival, but thriving? The atmosphere intensified as she made eye contact with the boy again, and even though his frown remained, Amara sensed a flexibility in his demeanor. Perhaps he was finally willing to question his own armor. This invitational struggle continued to expand, and she knew the risks involved went beyond her hapless talk of vulnerability. The very foundation of her beliefs was at stake. The moment passed, yet it left an echo, a promise revitalized, a challenge deepened. The room began to reverberate with tentative conversations and sharing amongst individuals who had been guided out of the shadows, yet in the far back, the boy's defiance lingered like a storm cloud nestled on the horizon. Amara recognized that her journey was far from complete. Challenging not just him, but also her own hidden fears awaited. What new battles loomed on the outskirts of this revelation? She sensed another confrontation, one rife with emotional reckoning, drawing nearer, ready to ensnare her once again. Amara stood amidst the shifting momentum, the vibrations of vulnerability still echoing through the room. She inhaled deeply, grounding herself in the moment. This was not just a test of her leadership but a pivotal turning point in her own narrative. The realization that she was replacing fear with openness extended far beyond the confines of this room. It had the potential to alter her perception of herself entirely. The boy's steady gaze still bore into her, a challenge laced with both skepticism and an invitation to continue. She felt her pulse quicken, the air thick with the remnants of doubt. Was she really making progress, or merely dragging out the inevitable conflict? I want you to think, she pressed on, her voice steady, about what it feels like to be brave. It's not the absence of fear, it's about how we respond to it. The words felt powerful, yet she could sense a flicker of unease creeping through her own resolve. As she scanned the room, Amara made eye contact with Mia again. Rather than simply supporting her, Mia was studying the room too, her critical eye glancing between their peers and the boy at the back. It dawned on Amara that each one of them might carry a fear as palpable as the boy's. The various facades hid deeper stories woven into their lives: disappointment, resentment, longing for connection. Suddenly, she imagined a way to leverage the boy's skepticism, to channel it into a shared dialogue rather than an impasse. She gestured towards him, her resolve hardening, you seem to carry a lot of weight on your shoulders. Do you think that strength means going it alone? For a moment, tension rippled through the room as silence thickened again. Her heart raced. Would he respond with anger? Instead, his expression hardened, but for a fleeting second, vulnerability seeped through his defenses. Strength is doing what you have to do, he replied, his tone clipped. It was a response rooted in survival, yet it hinted at the walls that surrounded him. Is it really strength if it isolates us? Amara countered, taking a moment to absorb his words. What if leaning into one another is the true act of courage? Could we challenge that definition together? The murmurs resumed, echoing around her like ripples on water. She watched as her peers shifted uncomfortably at the thought of their vulnerabilities. It was a reminder that growth often required discomfort instead of shying away. They needed to confront it. Amara turned back to him, her heart pounding, knowing this moment was a standstill for both of them. Let us rewrite the rules. Being strong isn't shutting everyone out, it's letting someone in. The boy frowned, and Amara perceived a flicker of realization but couldn't quite capture it. In that instant, the possibility of connection felt tantalizingly close, yet frustratingly out of reach. Driven by an urge to demonstrate her conviction, she continued, when we mask our fears, we cripple ourselves. I'm not asking you to be vulnerable without preparation. I propose a safe space for all of us to experiment with honesty. What's the worst that could happen? The boy's arms, once crossed, relaxed slightly, a measure of his interest breaking through his steadfast barrier. As Amara continued the conversation, she recognized that her previous sense of doubt could evolve into steadfastness if she embraced this moment of uncertainty, yet, deep within, the shadows of fear loomed. What if the fragile bridge she was trying to build collapsed? Could she withstand the weight of her peers' expectations, even as she began to unearth her own hidden strengths? Time ebbed, and the world around her faded under the intensity of the moment. They were on the edge of a breakthrough, but the road ahead was fraught with complications. She could sense the ticking clock fast approaching, as unseen forces began to mount against her journey. Determined, Amara steadied her breath and pushed forward, thinking of the potential that lay within vulnerability, both for her and the boy. But a sudden thought interrupted her focus. What if it led to a confrontation, exposing deeper scars than they were prepared to face? As she contemplated this potential revelation, she felt the tension in the room grow taut, as if the very air themselves awaited a reckoning. This was no longer merely about proving a point, she was standing at the precipice of personal transformation. She was ready to unveil who she truly was, but would she be brave enough to navigate the fallout? The question lingered in her mind as she realized the stakes had escalated. Next, she would need to confront the hidden truths, hers and others, that had kept them shackled in silence. What if uncovering these truths was the only pathway to the courage they all desperately sought? Amara's heart thudded in her chest as silence enveloped the room, punctuated only by the sound of her breath and the distant rustle of uncertain movements. She felt an electric blend of fear and anticipation surging through her veins. This was no longer just about the boy or her peers, it was a crucible for her own growth. With a newfound clarity coursing through her, Amara met the boy's gaze firmly. What if, together, we could define strength in a new way? What if speaking our truths is the first step towards bravery? She saw his expression shift subtly, the hardness beginning to crack just enough to reveal a glimpse of the vulnerability she sensed lurking beneath. He opened his mouth, hesitated, and then closed it again, grappling with words he seemed reluctant to voice. It was both frustrating and inspiring. They were at a crossroads, not just as individuals, but as a collective. Amara took a breath and risked a pivot in tactics. Tell me your story. If we create a space free from judgment, perhaps we can learn from each other. The words spilled from her lips with surprising ease, a lifeline she wasn't entirely sure he would take. The murmurs escalated again, each participant embroiled in their own internal battle. It occurred to her that she was inviting more than just the boy to share. She was inadvertently asking everyone present to strip away their layers of pretension and step into raw honesty. Could she lead them there? A shudder of fear clawed at her insides. What if they all laugh? She thought. The whispers swirled in her mind, filled with echoes of past doubts and failures. In that moment, she made a choice, to embrace the possibility of ridicule or disappointment as part of growth. Perhaps vulnerability could be contagious, and she stood as the catalyst. Turning her attention back to the boy, she simplified her request. Look, I know it's scary. But if you don't start now, when will you? We can't keep pretending. If we're to form any real connection, it has to begin with authenticity. The strength in her voice surprised her even as it left her vulnerable. His gaze softened momentarily, and she could see the battle within him intensifying. Halfway through, the stillness of the room became palpable. She watched other faces shift as they realized they were being asked to do the same, to confront something they feared, to step beyond their own comfort zones. The air thickened with shared tension, each individual now caught between curiosity and fear. Then, against all odds, he clenched his jaw, summoned his courage, and finally spoke up. "Fine. I'll start." Her heart raced, she wasn't sure what his confession might entail. Before he could continue, voices started to bubble from the edges of the group. "Wait, what about us?" said Mia, folding her arms, but her tone was inviting, urging others to find their voices too. In that instant, Amara recognized the gift of transformation unfolding before her. With one simple act of courage from the boy, others felt compelled to contribute. It became a chain reaction of honesty she hadn't completely envisioned but desperately hoped for. She leaned into the moment, poised at the precipice of this improbable connection, waiting for the revelations to unfurl. Could this collective sharing pave the way for genuine growth, or would exposing their truths complicate the fragile web of their relationships? As she surveyed her peers, their expressions a mixture of determination and fear, an unexpected reality settled over her. They were all united in their desire to belong, yet, as the first reluctant words of the boy broke the silence, Amara's heart ached with a new dread. What if their stories carried deeper wounds than they were ready to face? As each individual began to share, the air felt charged with possibilities, and Amara braced herself for the inevitable fallout. This was going to be far from easy. The revelations ahead could shatter the very foundation they sought to build. The moment was ripe for reckoning, and she stood on the brink of transformation, her own identity in flux as she faced the collective vulnerability surging within the room. Yet the question loomed, would the bravery they displayed hold them together, or would the unveiling of their truths threaten to tear them apart? Amara's breath caught in her throat as the boy's words began to form, unraveling the silence that had clung to them like a heavy fog. Each syllable felt like a crack in a dam, and she sensed the tension shifting, the group teetering on the brink of a breakthrough. Was she truly prepared for the truth that might spill forth? As the boy began his tale, tentative at first, then gathering momentum, Amara felt an unfamiliar ache in her chest. His vulnerability resonated within her, pulling at old wounds she had long kept buried. She listened, gripped by the realization that his story was no different than hers in the essence of pain and fear. This recognition stirred something deep inside her. It illuminated a path she hadn't considered before. The narrative spiraled into questions of identity, family dynamics, and moments of isolation. Each detail drew the group in closer, their cautious expressions melting into empathy. Faces softened as mirroring experiences surfaced, hers nodded in a blend of sadness and determination to keep forging ahead. Mia spoke up next, her voice steady despite the quiver of uncertainty. "I used to think that pretending to be perfect was the only way to keep people from judging me." Her confession punctured the air, igniting an echo of relief alongside Amara's growing resolve. A swell of camaraderie erupted, each person feeding off the courage shared and magnifying their willingness to expose wounds. With every story that unfolded, Amara felt a radiating warmth envelop her, urging her to join the circle not just as a listener, but as a participant. The rawness of their truths rejuvenated something dormant inside her, something she had choked down in fear of judgment. But the unsettling thought gnawed, whispering, what if you falter? How could she bear the weight of her own past? The insecurities that plagued her, the moments of torment that had shaped her perspective, they were no less potent than the fears swirling around her. Summoning the will to step forward on this precipice of honesty felt monumental, yet necessary. What if embracing their collective vulnerabilities created an unprecedented safety that propelled them forward instead? This moment could be a catalyst for her transformation. Inspiration coursed through her veins, reminding her of that defining spark when she had first voiced her thoughts about redefining strength. Why not lean into it once more? Taking a deep breath, Amara broke through the cacophony. "I'm afraid too, but I understand you. I'm tired of carrying this weight alone." The room stilled, all eyes now trained on her. She could feel the pulse of anxious anticipation, but there was a glint of resilience embossed on her heart. "I don't talk about the bullying I faced much, but it's been a huge part of my life. I let it restrict me, trapped in my head. But hearing you all, I realize I need to reclaim my story." The words flowed from her with a vigor that surprised even herself, and for every heartbeat that passed, she felt a layer of fear peeling away. No longer was she just Amara, that girl who had suffered in silence, she was becoming Amara, brave enough to embrace her reality. She noticed glimmers of recognition on her peers' faces as they echoed her sentiments. The once tense air began to shatter, welcoming the tender light of healing to seep in. But as the confessions cascaded around her, old insecurities crept back in, pulling her toward the shadows. What if their compassion wasn't enough to shield her when things got raw? The group's growing sense of unity was beautiful, but a nagging fear whispered, "What if you can't keep them together?" Amara stood, heart racing, aware that they were traversing uncharted territory. Their shared bravery felt vulnerable but potent, and she sensed the delicate line between connection and chaos was now trembling under their revelations. Just as the soothing warmth began to settle, a heavy truth entered her mind: vulnerability invites ridicule, but so does strength. Where would this shared journey land them next? Would they find their path illuminated, or would darkness overshadow their honesty? The stakes had risen, and an unexpected challenge awaited her. The tension swelled, reverberating through the room, as Amara braced for whatever would come next. What would she lose by exposing herself fully, and could they navigate the impending turbulence together? The moment held its breath, on the brink of revelation and uncertainty alike. Amara stood before her classmates, the air thick with anticipation and unspoken fears. What began as an outpouring of vulnerability had transformed into a shared exploration of strength, yet the weight of her own story lingered. She craved that pivotal breakthrough not just within her but resonating through every student in that auditorium. The courage she had summoned before now became the bridge toward greater understanding and solidarity. As she locked eyes with the boy who had challenged her, she felt the invisible threads of connection weaving through their shared narratives. The weight of vulnerability no longer felt daunting, instead, it emitted a warmth, revealing the power in collective truth. "Together, we can redefine what strength means," she declared, her voice steadier than it had ever been. "Rather than toughening our hearts against the pain, let us acknowledge it. Let it unify us." Her words rippled through the audience, a challenge to not only listen but to engage. The fear that had constrained her began to fade, replaced by the urgency to connect those very threads. In that moment, the boy shifted uneasily but with a spark of curiosity dancing in his eyes. He took a breath, drawing from the same place that had allowed him to finally voice his story. "I thought I had to carry this burden alone, but maybe I don't need to." His admission broke the last remnants of rigid barriers. Quiet murmurs of agreement echoed through the room. Amara felt a rush of triumph course through her veins. They were moving beyond isolation, toward liberation. As if fanning a growing flame, her classmates started to share their own stories, tales of struggle, of resilience, of finding purpose through pain. Each narrative became a stepping stone, guiding them through the fog of uncertainty. Suddenly, the ordeal of being a teenager transformed into a collective experience of understanding, and guilt morphed into empathy. The atmosphere in the auditorium shifted, it became a sanctuary. The students revealed their fears and hopes, echoing the rhythm of Amara's transformative journey. They were no longer isolated individuals, but a chorus of voices. As they shared, their truths combined into a resounding declaration. Vulnerability had become their shared strength. Each story spoke of striving for connection amidst chaos, inviting others to shed their facades, too. The boy from the back smiled, and for the first time, she noticed the weight of tension lift from his shoulders. He spoke again, but this time it was filled with conviction. "I didn't understand until now. I've wasted so much energy trying to act tough when all I really wanted was to belong." Nods of agreement cascaded through the audience, validation reflecting in their eyes. Amara felt every ounce of doubt that had clung to her begin to dissipate. With each student stepping forward to speak, confidence flourished within her. She stepped into her role not just as a participant but as a leader, guiding their collective consciousness toward authenticity. Amara realized this was her moment of achievement, not for herself alone, but for every student finding their voice. The seeds of change had germinated. She wasn't just an advocate for visibility, she had transformed into a beacon of courage. The journey had monumental significance, both personally and collectively. Each time she spoke, she reinforced a sense of shared responsibility and growth. As the assembly drew to a close, their voices still echoed in the air. Amara felt grounded in her identity. The trepidation that once marked her descent into self-doubt had paved a path to self-acceptance. She now embraced her role as a vessel for change, one that could reach beyond her local community. It solidified her purpose, connecting her experiences with hope. Months later, Amara stood once more in the same auditorium, this time to celebrate the success of a club focused on mental health advocacy and student support. The story that had once confined her had become the fire that ignited change. A ripple effect had emerged, breeding solidarity and cementing new friendships. Recognition from the school board and the community affirmed what she had achieved. Her once muted voice resonated through the school halls, now a symbol of tenacity and resilience. The walls she had once walked through as a ghost had transformed, embracing the vibrancy of a communal perseverance. Even through the tears of joy that filled her eyes, one thought anchored her spirit: this was just the beginning of many journeys yet to unfold. The transformation resonated deep within her, granting her the vision that the strength to overcome lay within every individual ready to embrace their truth. Amara's voice echoed in her mind: every scar tells a story, and every story deserves to be heard. Her vulnerability had birthed courage, not just for herself but for all the silent stories waiting to be told. It was a metamorphosis she had initiated, a journey fueled not merely by her own experiences, but by the echo of countless others illuminating the path forward. She had achieved not just personal growth but had blossomed into a recognized force of change, a champion for authenticity and resilience. This was the moment she had longed for. Now, what about you? If Amara's journey inspired you, you need to support this channel right now. Subscribe immediately to not miss out on our next exclusive emotional stories. Don't miss the powerful lessons ahead. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure these transformative tales reach those who need them most. Comment your reactions and theories about this stunning conclusion. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who could benefit from this amazing journey. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to make an impact today.